Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Moon Memos. I'm here with someone very special whose email moniker is always listening. David Lessen is a licensed mental health counselor, life coach, and meditation and mindfulness instructor. He has also been teaching Zen Buddhism for 20 years, 10 of which he was a fully ordained monk in the Dharma drum tradition of Master Shengyan. And that's where I met him. Hi,
Yeah.
David.
Hi. I
I'm
think that
so
was a
glad
weekend
we're...
retreat, right?
Yeah, it was 2 3-day beginners retreats back to back. That was my first time there.
Right.
Yeah, and then I volunteered a couple of times.
Right. That was 10 years ago? 15 years ago.
Yeah, 15 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
When I was in grad school just before, actually, the first one I think was just before I became a student.
Right. I was still a monk at the retreat center.
So, do you want to tell us a little more about yourself and the work you're doing now?
Sure. Let's see, where do I start? I could start with what I'm doing now, which is I split my time between coaching and counseling. So with coaching, I guess you can call it life coaching, but I use the term life mentor because the model that I use is really based on the Zen Buddhist model of living, and which includes mindfulness practice. Excuse me. It includes mindfulness or meditation, cultivation of self-awareness, also includes having a structured life, and then being clear about one's values. I like to call it mentoring because it's a kind of training that I'm accompanying someone on, where they can make changes to their life through these three aspects. So that's the coaching piece. And then I do mental health counseling. Now it's only about 2 days of the week. And actually, I only have a few clients with that now. I have 4 or 5 clients that I do counseling with because...
What's the biggest difference between those two, would you say?
I think it depends on the way a person does counseling. But with my approach, which is, it's in the counseling realm, it most closely resembles something called ACT or ACT. I don't know if you've heard of that. Acceptance and commitment therapy, which is an approach which was likely modeled off of Buddhism or Zen.
Oh,
And
bless you.
thanks. Yeah, a lot of coughing recently. Maybe I'll ask you about that later. ACT is basically helping a person clarify what they value, accepting that suffering is a part of, human life, and then making a commitment to make changes. So this is the ACT model in general. So it's really similar, if not almost identical, to the way I do coaching. But the difference, I think, with mental health counseling is often the audience. So the folks who may be reaching out for counseling could have more serious issues with depression or anxiety or any other kind of, difficulty that's in the counseling field classified as some sort of disorder. In the coaching field, I don't use any of those terminologies or that paradigm. But, the audience can be different. Usually I wouldn't accept someone to do coaching if they had a condition that needed a lot of attention, which is in the counseling field, the person could get more attention, not only from their counselor, but from a psychiatrist or from a team of people. So there's a lot of overlap, but then there's also a distinction.
I can relate to that because I think we work with the mind and emotions in Chinese medicine, but maybe people who come to me, they don't think that's the cause of whatever they're experiencing. So maybe they come to me with something else, and then we end up actually working on their mindset, or maybe an imbalance that was caused by emotional states. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense. Well, do you agree with that life is, well, suffering is inevitable? I guess, is that what you said about? Because I've also heard this, to put it this way, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that speaks more up to resistance to the pain, or resistance to anything that's like, pain like, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I agree. Pain, if it's referring to the physical experience of just something uncomfortable, whether it's just an uncomfortable touch or if it's due to illness, but suffering is optional. Yeah, sure, it's optional, but it requires awareness. And a lot of the time we don't have that awareness, so we suffer. So I'd still say it's inevitable, but that a person can develop awareness and suffer much less.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's an ideal, at least in my tradition that I come from, the Chan Buddhist tradition, that the ideal is that a person doesn't have to suffer at all. But that's again, an ideal. It's not easy.
It reminds me of when I was told, because I wasn't around to witness it, but when Master Sheng Yan was going through dialysis, people around him couldn't believe that, but he expressed that, he didn't feel pain. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about.
Well, from what I remember, he said, because he would give some lectures in the morning after breakfast, and he would share this kind of experience of going through dialysis. And he did say, he experienced a kind of pain, which was itchiness.
Mm.
His body was itchy. Like he'd never experienced such a kind of itchiness that it was kind of hard to bear. So he said it was really itchy. It's hard to bear sometimes, but he, at least from what we could see, he was still very calm and at ease, and wasn't complaining.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind
Mm-hmm.
of sharing the story, but I never heard him complain.
Mm-hmm.
And express the suffering of, I hate this, the resistance, that you
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least from what I remember, he said he had, of course, he experienced the physical pain and discomfort, but it was his practice to accept it.
Yeah, just be with it. That's
Hmm.
so interesting. That might be a whole other episode, because in a classic text of acupuncture, yeah, it's acupuncture. 黄帝内经, the Yellow Emperor's Classic. It says that all pain and itching originates from the heart, and I get the pain part, but I never really could find, like, I understand the itching part. And it also reminds me of, I've seen little kids when they're being tickled. It gets to a point where it's so intolerable, they start crying. And
Hmm.
it's not like they're in pain, but it's impossible to bear. And so I imagine that's what Master was experiencing, that kind of itching prolonged is like. It must be pretty torturous,
Yeah.
agonizing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all about, it has something to do with our heart, and that means the heart system, which I think is most closely translated to the mind in English.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna segue us into the topic I proposed,
Okay.
which is, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it's in the Chan tradition where this term comes from, 正念. Is that right?
Well, technically, Zheng just comes from the most basic of Buddhist teachings,
Mm-hmm.
um, the Chinese term Zheng. And in the Chan tradition, it's not used that much. actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Even in the Mahayana teachings, Zheng Nian doesn't have nearly as much of a place as it does within the more foundational teachings.
Okay.
Hmm.
So,
But there is a modern Buddhism sort of tends to clump everything in just a one big barrel, and everyone kind of shares from different teachings of different times and traditions. So in modern Zen Buddhism, especially in Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition, he
mhm,
uses that word quite a lot, Zheng Nian.
he does. Okay.
The English he uses is mindfulness.
Well, so this is interesting because the one time I tried to bring up this discussion was with someone who called himself a Zen. He's an abbot, but I really kind of had a problem with that because he was teaching us at a retreat and he was doing guided meditation. Like he was talking through the time we were supposed to be sitting, and I just I find it difficult to accept something that has such clear, clear and defined rules about what it is, and that he could take that, kind of really change it up a lot, and still call it Zen. So
Hmm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but I brought this discussion up with him and it didn't really go anywhere. Except that he did say he didn't use the word mindfulness much because he didn't like it for whatever his reason is. And when I read about how this Chinese medicine doctor in China explained the word zheng, it really opened up so much for me. So one day I want to do this with visuals. It's a little bit difficult to explain with words, but I'll do my best. So the word zheng, I guess one in Chinese, words can have many different meanings, and the word zheng is one of those. So it could be upright, it could be orthogonal, it could be correct, but all those meanings are in the same vein. But if you take the word and break it apart, which again is unique to Chinese characters because some of them are made up of different radicals. I think that's how I can call them. So this particular one, there's a horizontal line above, and then all the parts below. Actually, if you separate it, the part below means stop, or what's another way to say 止?
Hmm. Yeah, to stop or
To
to
stop. Or
still.
yeah, okay, still. And so this doctor, his name is Liu Li Hong. He was pointing out that when you look at this word that way, that one is in front of the stop or stillness. And so for him, this describes that moment, which is just in front of stillness, which in a way is the definition of yang, which is the the ever present action. It's like energy that never stops moving. Something the opposite of yang, so this opposite of active energy is yin, which is stillness. And so for him, he used words like effervescent. So it's like this moment that keeps occurring in life, like it never stops, right? Unless we stop it. But it's like this moment that let's say I break it down to a billionth of a second, that keeps going, and that's how energy and that's how chi flows. And so when I think about that, this is in a way something that's come closest to me understanding what yang is, what this energy that doesn't stop moving. So still took a lot of words and a lot of gestures to get here, but I feel like now I'm getting what yang means. So then when I think about mindfulness, even just the word full really contradicts this, because that even the full part to me really implies something that's like static and it's already like formed, you know? So in a way that's like very different from energy, which has no form. And that's why it can keep going and going and going.
That's a very interesting extrapolation on the word. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think it's important also to understand the context of the Buddha's teachings and why those terms were used, zheng nian,
Mm-hmm.
and to remember that the Buddha didn't speak Chinese, so he didn't really use
Mm-hmm.
that term. This is a later translation of sati, and I forget the word that stands for zheng
Mm-hmm.
in Pali or Sanskrit.
Also, it's actually a direct translation.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, the zheng part, the zheng nian, it's all part of the Eightfold Path, which has this word in English, it's often translated as right, like right mindfulness, not as in right and wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but actually the right part or the correct mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
or even we could just say correct mind, especially mindfulness. You could just say correct mind or correct awareness. Um, it's in opposition to incorrect, which means a correct kind of awareness can free us from suffering. An incorrect or lack of awareness can lead us to suffering.
That makes a lot of sense too.
Right. So it's not like a moral judgment of this is right mindfulness and that is morally wrong.
Wrong.
It's just,
Right.
right, if we
Yeah.
have awareness, then we have freedom. If we don't have awareness, then we have suffering. So
And
it
that's
is in opposition to 邪念.
right. And that actually brings it back to Chinese medicine, because, yeah, what makes us sick or what causes imbalance is anything that is off, crooked.
Right. Off alignment.
Yeah, off alignment, crooked, and
Yeah.
but that word can be used in other contexts, and it means more like evil. But I
Right.
think that would be a mistranslation.
Yeah.
And this brings it all back to, what is his name? Eckhart Tolle?
Totally.
Yeah.
Toll.
Tolle. Is it Tolle?
I'm not sure actually.
But in the first book I read, I think it was The Power of Now, he explains that the word sin actually means off target, just like you missed the target. It doesn't mean anything about being wrong, being morally wrong and bad and evil, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So this all, I don't know, it's like in all these traditions and languages, it actually seems to be pointing at the same things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. So language is really fascinating, but
it
no
is.
matter how things are translated, they're just it's so hard to capture the human experience.
I feel like sometimes things actually can be gained from translation, but then even more often, yeah, a lot of things are lost.
Yeah. 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 So in the Chan tradition and in Mahayana teachings of Buddhism, they just don't use zheng nian, just because nian in some contexts, especially in Chinese, can also mean like thought and thinking,
Yeah,
right? So the term,
that's what the full part means to me, like full of thoughts. Yeah.
right, which is actually the opposite
Yeah.
in a way. It's a mind free from being full of thoughts and busy with thoughts.
Right.
So the
Like
term that's
empty. We
used
want it to
later,
be empty, right? We want to empty our mind, kind of thing.
yeah, empty so that we can use it as opposed to being cluttered.
Hmm.
So in Zen and in Chan Buddhism and in just Mahayana Buddhism in general, the word jue or awareness is used. Jue, which could mean awareness or awakening or
Uh-huh.
enlightenment, just as simply as that, just being aware. So it could be aware of the thoughts, could be aware of, most importantly, the mind that doesn't move, or a mind
Wow, which
not
mind is
filled
that?
with anything. Yeah, it's like the mind that's not filled with anything, but it can make use of things. It
Mm-hmm.
can have thoughts, it can have responses, but it's just not cluttered with them. So the word mind or shin is used as well instead of nian, which is like thought.
Right. So it is some some in some traditions, mind is directly translated to Shin, or vice versa.
Yeah, that's another tricky term, but it could refer to the most basic kind of awareness that we could have. So mind may not be great because mind in English is often associated with intellect. So
I
it's not
didn't. Mm-hmm.
limited to intellect. So or heart. Heart also sounds like, yeah, it could be physical heart. It could also be emotion. Have
Mm-hmm.
a connotation of emotion. But shin is not limited to emotion either. It's like the most basic quality of being conscious or aware. That's
Right.
often referred to as this sort of pure mind or no mind, which is just awareness.
Yeah, I was just reading this book. I'm really loving it. Written by Dr. Tom Cowan. It's called Human Heart, Cosmic Heart, and one thing he wrote is that when we when we want to kind of like point to ourselves, we don't point say I am. We point to our heart and say this is me,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, that's like another kind of layer on this existence, consciousness, and heart. And it's not intellect, because intellect, thoughts do come from the brain, but even when their brain isn't functioning, there are still other things going on.
Yeah, and can we say thoughts only come from the brain? Because the brain also depends on a lot. It depends on the spinal cord, it depends on the rest of the body, the nervous system, and the whole body depends on oxygen to even be alive.
Mm-hmm.
So, the uh, uh, the more scientific look at mind and brain
Mm-hmm.
and dividing everything into intellect and feeling, it just seems kind of artificial. We can't really
Yeah,
divide it up.
kind of contrived, like trying to separate the body and the mind too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Even the brain and the body you can't separate.
yeah,
We could just like take it out, put it on the table, and like have a conversation with someone's brain.
like those sci-fi movies where it's in a jar, and then
Yeah, yeah,
if that would work, then they would do it with Einstein's brain, I think.
right? Brain transplant.
So tell me a little more about why you like the term mindfulness.
Well, now that you mention it, I don't know if I like the term mindfulness,
Okay.
but I think if we understand mindfulness as fullness of awareness, it's like our awareness is fully with whatever the object is. Now that makes sense. It's like the mind is, if I'm looking at you, my
Mm-hmm.
mind is full of you.
Mm-hmm.
Other than kind of I'm looking around, I'm checking my watch, my mind is, scattered and, not full, but kind of uh, divided.
Very
So I think
present, being
yeah,
very present here.
yeah. So I could see how mindfulness as that translation makes sense in that whatever we're attentive to, if we're fully attentive to it, that object in a way is filling our mind, or our mind is that object. If I'm looking at you, I can't say my mind is over here and you're over there, but actually my mind is full of you. So my mind is actually you the moment
Mm-hmm.
that you're an object of my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that sense, mindfulness makes sense.
Wow, I never thought about the fullness being that part, but
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. As opposed to like what we said before, it could seem like it's a mind full of thoughts and busy with distractedness. And it's interesting, the original term is just sati, which, you know, the closest meaning or the original meaning is just to remember.
Oh, wow.
Sati means to remember,
Huh.
but it's not like to remember when I was younger and this and that happened, but it means to remember to be present, as opposed to being forgetful and just like, our mind is here, it's over there, we're not even aware of what we're doing. So it's like this remembrance of being attentive or being present to whatever we're faced with.
Wow, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, not recall a memory, but just to come back to being present.
Yeah, yeah. Because our baseline state is often forgetfulness. It's like if we weren't forgetful, there'd be no need for the term mindfulness. And actually, there'd be no need for Buddhism, you know? But it's because we're so forgetful that there's an opposite term to remind us, which is remembrance or remembering.
I never heard it being explained to me that way either, that it's forgetfulness. I guess what I picked up was always like that, we're asleep, we're lost, but never forget. And that's a whole different, yeah, it's, I mean, I need some time to digest that, but it's a whole different game.
Different angle to look at it. So language is so fascinating. There's so
Hmm.
many different angles we could use to describe one thing. Even like I don't know, a kind of fruit. You could give it so many names, let alone, an internal experience. So pretty wild.
And maybe we'll come back to this, what I was telling you before about the very clear and, I guess this would be my description, but like almost austere ways and rules in Zen traditions. Can you talk about that a little from your perspective?
Hmm. Yeah, sure. I think it's also important to distinguish Zen as the Japanese version, or Zen as being a part of Japanese culture, not only Buddhist tradition, but the Japanese form of Zen, which I've never been involved in a community for many years, but the communities that I've visited and have friends in, from what I see, the Japanese tradition has a certain degree of strictness and a lot of attention to form and ritual,
Hmm.
precision of things. So even like, the precision of how your robe sits on your body or the precision of your posture.
That's why they like archery and they're
Yeah,
good at archery. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, beyond the Buddhist tradition. That's like the whole samurai tradition or Zen or Japanese cultural elements that were brought into Chan when it came to China, when it was brought to Japan. Right. So I think it's important that when we look at any form of Buddhism, that we know what are the cultural elements and what are like the key principles of the Buddha's teaching. So Japanese Zen has its cultural elements. Chinese Chan has its own cultural elements, which are not so much focused on form or ritual. And you could say it's kind of more looser and relaxed. But the principles of the practice are the same because they all come from Buddhism. So, yeah, the strictness, it can often depend on the culture behind the Buddhist practice. In a Zen hall, if you're told not to move and you move, someone may come over and like hit you with a stick. Depends on the tradition. And that's usually not done to beginners. But in that context, no one should move because movement is often from a distracted mind.
Hmm.
But then if you go to a different tradition of Buddhism, like the Theravada tradition or some meditative schools in Burma, for example, I've seen them sitting and they're just like, they can move around, even like kind of look around, just because they don't have that culture of strict posture or strict rules during meditation. It's kind of left up to the individual to see, okay, if I move and scratch, is that suffering or not? It's like, relief that is. That's not suffering, it's relief. But the person may find out on their own that, like, okay, after they scratch the first time, it's like, it moved. And they keep scratching and they keep scratching, and maybe they get totally preoccupied with itchiness. And they realize that their mind is irritated.
They forgot.
Yeah, yeah. They became forgetful of their method, which was the breathing, and they're starting to pay attention to all the itchiness all over. Whereas in a Zen hall, it's like you wouldn't have the opportunity to scratch. You just have to realize that, wait a second, even paying attention to itchiness is, a kind of suffering, distractedness.
Well, maybe they got less vicious mosquitoes in Japan, because let me tell you, the ones
Right.
in Burma were pretty. Gotta have compassion for that, because that
Good
was
point.
hard.
That's a good point. In the Zen halls, you would have them sitting in mosquito nets. Yeah, yeah. So there's so much cultural stuff in the different traditions of Buddhism. It can be hard for someone not familiar with the core teachings of Buddhism to assume that, like, all Buddhism is just the way it's presented by a certain tradition. And it's not. It's just a different packaging.
And I would say that because you pointed out it's so much more focused on form, the Japanese Zen, it's easier sort of to present to the foreign cultures, because it's easier to present form than to have something that doesn't have form. And
Yeah.
so maybe that's why, I don't know if this is actually the case, but it seems to me that people are more familiar with Japanese Zen in the US than the other lineages.
Yeah, yeah. It's like everybody knows the word Zen, or if you show a picture of a Zen hall, it's like, wow, that looks so Zen, because they see, the Japanese temple or the Tang Dynasty style temple with, paper windows and tatami floors and the robes. Yeah, so I mean, that's an advantage to share with people. You have a very clear brand, you know? But I think another thing that's actually quite good about that meticulousness with form and Zen is it gives a person something really concrete to do, to be aware of your clothing, to be really aware of how you sit, even aware of how you walk through the hall, as opposed to just kind of getting up from your cushion, throwing your clothes over your shoulder, and just kind of moseying out in forgetfulness. There's a form to walk in the Zen hall.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also those forms in the Chan tradition. So it's like
And
the form becomes the object of mindfulness.
yeah, and actually, I've you know, and the things that are built, they last, and they're so beautiful and effective. Like when I was in Japan, I was in one of those old temples, and a very rare moment when there was not anybody else around, I slide open and close the shoji door just to see, just to like do it, see what it
Mm-hmm.
felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And to my surprise, almost shock, it was so smooth and silent. Like this big door. Okay, it's not heavy because it's the paper is attached to it, not like glass or anything, but
Right.
still, it was just, I mean, I don't know how old it is. It's not original, but it's still quite old, and it's still made by hand, not by power tools.
Right.
But this thing just moved, and when you look at a tatami, like the way it's woven, and if you clean it right and if you maintain it right, that thing can last lifetimes
Yeah.
and still retain its function and beauty. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's like attentiveness to all of those things. It shows that a person's mind is there,
Fully
fully present.
present.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're constructing that shoji, if your mind slips, forget it.
Yeah, yeah. And
Something's gonna.
if your mind did slip, you'd go back and check many times to see how it's working and maintaining it. I'm sure, there's a lot of attention put on every corner of that temple.
Has anyone come to you as a client who knew very little about these traditions or teachings? Or I guess another way to ask is how do you teach these things or transmit these things to your clients if they don't really they don't have any background or knowledge in it?
Hmm. Yeah, there are plenty of people who don't have any background in Buddhism or meditation and no interest in Buddhism or religion or anything. But most people are interested in training the mind through meditation. Uh, trying to think of, instead of using the word mindful, to live a life remembering to be present. So I share the secular version of those three things that I mentioned in the beginning. In Buddhism, it's jie ding hui, right? Which is discipline, meditation, or mental stability, and wisdom, right? I use a secular version of structured living, meditation, and values, being clear about a person's values. And I find that those three, which is, structure is really behavioral, how we live our day-to-day life. What do we do from day to day, week to week? Having some form of structure gives us a clear thing to do. We know what we should be doing all the time, and we have much less chance to be forgetful. Meditation training, you don't need to say much. It helps a person really calm down and be clear. And the part about values, with Buddhism, Buddhism has its own set of values. But when I work with clients, I don't push Buddhist values on them, especially if they have no interest in it. But I try to help them find what are their own values, what's important to them in life, so that they can have a much clearer direction of how to make their structure. So it's like all three of those go together, where values informs a person's day-to-day life structure. A calm and clear mind helps them be aware of their values, what is important, and a calm and clear mind also helps them live in a way which is just joyful and fulfilling, no matter what the structure. So those three things I found are just the core of well-being
Mm-hmm.
in my
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, makes sense to me. I wonder if you had already some ideas or inspiration to do this before you left monastic life, or this came after you left?
Well, when I was a monk, I was at one point struggling a little bit with how to present the core of the Buddha's teachings to folks here in the States,
Mm-hmm.
especially people who don't have any connection with the religion of Buddhism and the cultural packaging that I was a part of, which is the Chan tradition. And so it's Chinese culture, or Han Chinese culture packaged Buddhism. Now in upstate New York, with a bunch of people who are mostly white, mostly Christian, some diversity, but still it was like it's very foreign to many people. So I always wondered how to package the Buddha's teachings in a way that people can just relate to, and it's very practical. I personally was not, and I'm still not, really into the more of the mystical or the magical side of Buddhism. Things like special powers, pure lands, even rebirth. I don't deny it, but I don't see it as the core of Buddhism.
What are special powers?
Sorry?
What are the special powers?
Oh, so Buddhism talks about supernormal powers, which
Really?
is kind of like we talk about, I don't know, talk about the news. Things like the ability to read someone's mind,
Oh.
the ability to see into past lives,
Mm.
the ability to see great distances, see through things, see galaxies away. What else? 读通, the ability to fly or the ability to change stones into gold, right? These
Didn't
are
know
all
that.
these. Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's another one which
They
can't
didn't teach me that one on purpose.
right. And there's also the saying that, if your powers are not strong enough, the gold will turn back into stone sooner or later. You got to be really good. You got to make sure it's gold as long as, long enough so that you can get out of there if you're trying to fool someone. But the other super normal power that Buddhism talks about, which I think is the most practical one, is just the power to be free from suffering, with the power to have a mind that has literally no more leaks. It's like your mind doesn't leak, kind of like a pitcher with a crack in it will leak water. A mind that's forgetful will be leaking all these thoughts and, turbulent emotions. A mind with no leaks, which is whole and complete, is a mind without suffering. And that's the Buddha's greatest power. So, things like that, it's a whole different paradigm, and things that at least I have never experienced and most people find really challenging to accept at just face value. So as a monk, I always wondered, how useful is it to talk about this stuff? Can we just sort of just either pretend it doesn't exist or just leave it on the side and give people what's most practical, what they're looking for, how to
This is this connected to you becoming a counselor? Like, is that your way of trying to get this out to also reach more people, like I was talking about myself?
Yeah, my eventual leaving the monastic life was because I just wanted to find a new way to share the Buddha's most key teachings, and reach a broader audience, help more people than just those people who feel close to Buddhism or who can readily accept these things, which are, a bit not so easy to see or experience. It's kind of like it's math in the United States, math in the Congo, math in Russia, China, wherever. It's just math. There's just principles of how to calculate numbers. I see the Buddha's teachings just like that. There are this cultural stuff because the Buddha was born in India, and then all these different presentations of Buddhism have their own cultural elements, which are beautiful. But the core of it is just these principles of how to be aware of our mind and body and being, and how to live a life of freedom and joy, compassion. So, I feel that what I'm doing now is just one way to individualize these teachings of wisdom and compassion for anyone. My coaching is like that. It's the individualized approach to wakeful living, where Buddhism is a prepackaged thing, which you can accept or you gradually learn or not. Unless you have a teacher that you can work with very closely, it can be hard to make it your own, individualize it. So
Yeah,
that's what I feel my role is.
to help them bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I wanted to ask about your music, but I think that's something we can do another time if you're willing to come back.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, my music is another realm.
Is there anything else you'd like to share, or
I don't know, I think this was a fun discussion, and to explore even just how we use words to express how we live. I think hopefully it can help people reflect on the fact that all these different traditions, not only Buddhism, but different traditions of helping a person live wisely, wakefully, not in forgetfulness, but in, attentiveness and awareness, that there's so many different kinds of ways to package it. And with words and with forms.
Mm-hmm.
If we look deeply, we can see there's a lot of similarity, and even, wisdom is just wisdom at the core.
Yeah. I'm in this mastermind now, and basically what I'm learning is just how to free myself from all the internal constraints I've built, all with words. It's only words that created these prisons that seem so tight, but they're actually just words. And with awareness, with like a different perspective, I can dissolve them just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
one other thing I can say about words and language and interpretation is that when I took 2 classes in the I Ching, or some people know it as the I Ching, but it's not I, it's I.
Mm-hmm.
Please. That drives me nuts. um, I asked, I didn't I didn't even really know that there's so many different translations out there in different languages. And that's what people thought the hexagrams are. So I actually, with the teacher's help, got a dictionary that goes back to the time of when the text was written.
Mm.
And so I can look up each word and find out the meaning from that time, not read it from the modern way of the modern connotations.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing, because some things that we like without even being aware, because it's a word or phrase that's so common, we're like, I just started in the beginning, I just started to translate it like I was speaking it. But when I looked up the word or phrase in the old dictionary, it had a totally different meaning. And then the whole oracle became different. And I realized that it's important actually to do that, because I mean, at the end, whatever makes sense to the person asking the question, that's the significance of the oracle. But I feel like it could be so much richer, and maybe we actually do lose a lot in translation if it's not translated from the original, or not original, but the meaning these words had at the time they were written, they were used. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So
Yeah.
it's like you're learning the language of the author.
Yeah. I think the they say it's about 900 AD. That's when was it
Oh,
BC or AD? A long time ago.
oh, the I Ching was probably 900 BCE,
It's
right?
probably BC. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
BCE.
Makes more
Hmm.
sense. Yeah. So,
Ancient,
yeah.
ancient language, ancient paradigm.
And another fascinating thing is that, because I was just in Egypt and looking at the hieroglyphs, Chinese language is, I think, to my understanding, the only continuous language. But even still, meanings have changed so much because of culture and the way
Mm.
people change, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the evolution of Chinese characters themselves is fascinating to see where the modern characters came from. They were
From like the
pictograph.
oracle bones. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's why it's important to have people who live a tradition, not only have knowledge, but can actually live or practice the tradition so fluently that they can use language in a way which can really reach people of today.
Yeah, I'm starting to enjoy it more and more.
Hmm. Yeah, neat.
Well, thank you for
Okay,
and
you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
there'll be more if you're willing to come.
Sure. Talk music.
Yeah, that's something to look forward to.
Okay.
All right.